The first of the critical reasoning question types we'll discuss in this session is, appropriately enough, assumption. As you untangle the stimulus, write down your assumption on your noteboard. Then, scan the answer choices for a statement that matches what you wrote on the board. Let's work through this process together on a complete question. Begin, as always, by reading the question stem. That's what step 1 of the Kaplan method says to do. There are a couple of words in this stem that should grab your attention. The word assumes is definitely important. It tells you about the question type. This is an assumption question. Moreover, it tells you that you'll need to find the conclusion and evidence using one of Kaplan's 3 tactics. But there's another word of importance: nutritionist. The question is framed to direct our attention to the nutritionist's argument. The first thing you need to do as you untangle the stimulus is to find those nutritionists. They appear in the second sentence, but they don't begin to make their case until the third sentence. And the important parts of the stimulus are in that sentence. There's a great evidence keyword in that sentence: citing. The thing that you cite is the evidence. They predict, meanwhile, is a conclusion key phrase. So the first part of this sentence is the evidence, while the second part is the conclusion. A burger price reduction is going to hurt citizens' health. And the evidence is that the burgers have high cholesterol. Time to use your scope shift analysis. The evidence mentions high levels of cholesterol, but the conclusion doesn't. So the assumption has to connect cholesterol to the idea of hurting health. But as you may have noticed, there are actually 2 important assumptions. The conclusion states that a price reduction will have a certain effect, but the consequences of a price reduction are never discussed in the evidence. Again, keep your statement of the assumption flexible. Something like, this price reduction will cause consumers to eat more burgers than they otherwise would have. Now, search the answer choices for a statement that looks like one of your pre-phrased assumptions. Any answer choice that doesn't bridge one of the 2 gaps is incorrect. For instance, answer choice B doesn't mention cholesterol and health, which is the first gap. And it doesn't mention the effect that the price drop will have on consumers' diets. That's all you need to know about answer choice B. It is not the correct answer. Answer choice C includes the words cholesterol and health, but it does not actually connect these 2 concepts in the right way. It doesn't say that high cholesterol causes any particular health effect, so get rid of answer choice C as well. Answer choice D doesn't link cholesterol and health, and it doesn't link the price drop with an increase in the number of burgers eaten. So answer choice D isn't correct. That leaves A and E. Answer choice E connects the price drop with the revenues that Burgerland will earn. But neither assumption had anything to do with revenues, so answer choice E isn't correct either. Note that even if answer choice E does touch on some of the ideas in your assumptions, it's still wrong because it discusses things that are out of scope. Answer choice A, on the other hand, does connect 2 ideas that the evidence left unconnected: reduce burger prices and consumer diet. Reducing the price of the burgers will draw customers towards the burgers and away from lower cholesterol foods. That's a good match for your second assumption, which means that answer choice A is the correct answer. Congratulations, you've just successfully applied the Kaplan method for assumption questions. Let's look at another assumption example. This phrase in the stem indicates an assumption question. Apart from that phrase, there's nothing interesting in the stem, so move on to step 2 and untangle the stimulus. This keyword, thus, in the last sentence, indicates the conclusion. The winner of the last election is truly the people's choice. Now find the evidence. It comes in the 2 preceding sentences. You may have noticed, though, that one of the 2 evidentiary claims is more powerful than the other. On the one hand, in country X, voting is mandatory for eligible voters. The second fact is that 99% of the eligible voters in country X actually voted in the last election. Well, ask yourself, if someone were trying to convince you that the winner of an election was truly the people's choice, which piece of evidence would you find more compelling? Would it be that the voting was mandatory, Or would it be that almost 100% of the eligible voters actually voted? Probably the latter. If 99% of the eligible voters actually voted, it becomes much more reasonable to think that the winner of the election was the people's choice. Even so, there's a big scope shift here. Notice first that the conclusion talks about the people, which probably means all of the people who live in country X. The evidence, meanwhile, talks about citizens who are eligible to vote. So, one assumption of this argument is that most people who live in country X can vote. If only a handful of people in country X are eligible to vote, then elections may reflect very little about the opinion of the populace. Another gap is between voting and the people's choice. The argument assumes that the election results reflect the true choice of the people who voted. But if only one candidate is allowed to run for office, or if there are some rules forbidding certain people to run, then the winner of the vote might not be the true choice of the people who filled out ballots. You have two good predictions now, two well-phrased assumptions, and are ready for the last step of the Kaplan method. Search the answer choices for a statement that matches one of these predictions, and you'll find answer choice A. Answer choice A bridges the second gap, the one between the act of voting and the voter's true choice. Remember, for assumption questions, identify the conclusion and evidence, find the logical gap, and cover that gap with the assumption. Then, search the answer choices for a statement that matches the assumption you came up with.